Hi there. It's December the 19th. We're continuing our voyage through John's Revelation, the revelation of Jesus Christ. We're in chapter 10, reading the whole chapter from verses 1 to 11. So we're in the midst of the trumpets being sounded, which are the sign of the opening of the seventh seal. And just at this point, a great angel descends from heaven. And he's got a rainbow around his head. His feet are made of fire. There's a powerful, powerful picture here of the power of God coming down to earth. And as it touches earth, there are seven thunders. Again, this number seven keeps recurring. The seven speaks of completion and perfection. It's the number of heaven. And so these seven thunders sound. There's a thundering out. But actually, the words that the thunders are speaking are sealed up and they're not allowed to be heard. Perhaps reminiscent of the time when God was thundering at Sinai and the people put their hands over their ears and they said, "We don't want to hear God." So the thunders are perhaps connected to the voice of God, but these things are sealed up. However, in the angel's hand, there's a small scroll, Vibliatharion it's called, a little scroll. Viblion is a scroll, Vibliatharion is a little scroll. And this scroll is in the hand of the angel, and John is instructed to go and take the scroll. Now, this is very reminiscent of Ezekiel chapter 3, where Ezekiel also is given a scroll. And the scroll is taken, and it's perhaps a sign of John's own prophetic gift. It's a sign of his being a voice. At the end of this chapter, it said to the nations and to the peoples. And so he takes this scroll from the hands of the angel, and he says, the angel says to him to eat it, and so he eats the scroll. And by the way, in the midst of all this happening, there's a voice comes that says that time will end, time will finish. Chronos, that is in Greek, that the passing of time, the passage of time will end and God will fulfill what he's promised. So John takes this scroll and he eats it, rather like Ezekiel does in Ezekiel 3. And again, he finds it sweet in his mouth, just as Ezekiel had, but then he swallows it, he says, and it becomes bitter in his stomach. Now, that isn't something that we've read earlier. But here, for John, this word of God is sweet in his mouth, but it's bitter in his insides. But it is the word of God that he is called to speak to the nations. And like prophets before him, like Ezekiel, like Isaiah, like Jeremiah, John is called to be one who carries the word of God. We, as the people of God, are called to be prophetic. And sometimes that prophetic word can be spoken to people who just won't listen. Remember that at the end of chapter 9, it said that those who were still on earth wouldn't give up their idolatry. But nonetheless, we need to be faithful, as John is faithful, to declaring the word, even though it seems sweet in his mouth and bitter in its being carried out, bitter in his insides. So we are called to continue to speak in God's name, carrying the heart of God, knowing that God will eventually bring all things to their purpose and to their conclusion. Have a very good December 19th.